Hey guys, and welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is reading and books. I have always been an avid reader ever since I was a little kid. In middle school, you wouldn't catch me not reading. And even as an adult, I still read as much as I can. So today I'm going to be sharing my reviews on all of the books I've read so far this year. So I set a goal to read 25 books in 2023, which was a little bit more than what I read last year. But compared to other book talkers or booktubers, that's not a lot, but I have a lot of other hobbies. So 25 seems pretty reasonable, especially because I'm on book 15 already and we're halfway through the year. So I normally do an end of the year wrap up, but I feel like that will be very, very long. So for now, I want to share just what I've been reading so far this year and maybe give you some summer ideas for what books you want to read. So I'm mostly going to be going in order from the very first book I started this year, except for one little section I'm going to talk about one series that was kind of read out of order. Anywho, I'm kind of rambling, so let's just get into it. The good thing is for 2023, I bought a reading journal, and I bought this off of Amazon because by the end of the year, I had a hard time reviewing books because I couldn't remember what I did or didn't like, and I'd have to go back through and read again. But with this one, I'm able to write down kind of how I feel, what I rated it. So I'm going to be reading from this for this video, everything that I've read so far. That way I can give you guys a review of how I felt right after I read it. But we are going to start with the very first book of 2023. And honestly, we didn't start off very well because I did not finish this book. I got to a certain point and I ended up just skipping through to the end because I got bored, I got tired of the characters, and it just wasn't worth my time anymore. And that book is a booktok favorite, which is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. Now, I liked it from the beginning of it. I enjoyed Piper and her sister. I liked kind of the Schitt's Creek Alexis Rose vibes from Piper, but I just did not like the other guy, which was Brendan, I can't remember. I think it was Brendan. I could not stand this guy. All of his POVs just felt like kind of sleazy. Like he just kind of saw Piper as this like object and was very possessive and weird in their relationship together. Just like it felt kind of forced, and I don't know. Here's what I wrote about it at the time. I'll try to avoid spoilers for all of these books, but this is all about It Happened One Summer, and I'm sorry if you like it. I think I'm very picky on my male love interests, so I felt like it started out as a really cute rom-com. I liked Piper and Hannah's relationship. I really liked that. I liked that they were being forced into kind of this fish out of water situation. They were going to learn more about their roots, where their dad comes from, and just get to know themselves a little bit more than just the LA party girl lifestyle. But I just was not able to finish the book because it kind of veered off from that, and it just became about Piper and Brendan, and it was like all of a sudden they're like in love with each other and they're no longer enemies, which, you know, your girl loves a good enemies to lovers book, but I did not like them as lovers. I wish that the main focus would have been Piper and Hannah figuring themselves out, finding more about their family history, and learning to not be so vapid and vain. I guess I should probably give like a brief summary of this book. So the brief summary of this is the main character, Piper, is an LA socialite. She's like this wild child party girl, and she gets into some trouble, and her stepdad and her mom send her to their original hometown up in Washington, little podunk beach town, fisherman town, and she has to learn how to live on her own in order to come back home. So definitely not like a plot that we've never heard of before. And I really liked Piper. I liked her sister Hannah, and we're gonna get into more of what I didn't like about the book. I felt like it eventually became more about Piper and Brendan in this weird spicy romance that really didn't do anything for me, and less about Piper's connection to Westport. So I just did not like Brendan, and all of the spicy scenes were very cringy for me. Like, I don't care if there's a spicy scene, it's gotta be good. But there were words that I just never want to see in a book ever again, and I probably won't use them in this video, but it was just very cringy and I did not finish the book. So enough about that book. We did not start off 2023 strong in the book world, but if you liked it, that's great. It just didn't do anything for me. So did not finish, rated it like a 2 out of 5. Just did not, it didn't do anything for me. So luckily it was only $1 at the thrift store. So it's gonna go to some other home because your girl didn't like it. So the next book was the beginning of me and my friends starting our own little book club together, and we decided to read After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read many of her books. If you've seen any of my videos, you've heard me rave about her books before. But overall, this one was pretty mid. I don't think any of us really loved it, and it was also a rocky start for the book year, I guess. The basic summary of this is it's about a couple that have been together since college. They fell in love quickly. This book is about this couple at their breaking point. They hate each other. They decide that they're gonna take a year apart rather than get divorced immediately, kind of figure out if they still want to be together. And honestly, that plot sounded really interesting to me. Like, are they going to get back together? Like, should they be back together? Should they move on? Overall, I still enjoyed the book. It was my least favorite of all the Taylor Jenkins Reid books. So throughout the book, you're not really sure if Lauren and Ryan are going to get back together. And I liked that it was this will they, won't they, I don't know. I liked that they were exploring themselves apart. It was very realistic of marriage and the downfalls of marriage. It's not all happy fairy tales and all that stuff. I was also torn whether Lauren should get back together with Ryan. I was kind of just like, should she? Should she move on? Like, most of the time I'm like, yeah, girl boss, move on. But I was kind of like, she really loves him. I don't know. What I took away from this book is that I do not want to get married. These two people were so negative about each other. I don't know why they got like together in the first place. I won't spoil anything on whether they get back together or not, but I was just like, oh, is this what marriage is? How much you hate each other? And it seems like a lot of work. So that's what I took away from this book, is that I don't want to get married. One of the characters, which is Lauren's sister, Rachel, she is so content not being in a relationship. She's just focusing on starting her own business. And I related to her a lot more because I don't feel that need for a relationship like her sister Lauren does. She feels that she either needs to be with Ryan or she's got to move on to a new relationship, get married, start over. Versus Rachel is just like, I don't need it. I'm very content with myself and my life. It's fine. So I really liked her. I rated this book a 3 out of 5. It was my least favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book that she's ever written. But I didn't hate it. I just did not care for Lauren and Ryan as people. So did not care if they got back together or not. 3 out of 5. Not bad. It was kind of mid, but that means we can only move up from here, my friends. This next book, I was surprised at how much I liked it because it was on BookTok, and I don't know what it is. I keep taking BookTok recommendations and then I get like upset when I don't like them. This one I ended up actually really liking, and that is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. I hope I said that right. I don't know. Very different than something I've read. It's not a rom-com, it's not a romance. It's about this mentally ill girly who just wants to sleep for a year. And as somebody who's a little bit depressed all the time, I really related to that. Like, yes, how great would it be if we could just sleep for a year, refresh, and start over? So I get it, I get it. So this is set in New York City in 2000. This girl, she doesn't even have a name. We're just seeing this from her point of view. She grew up in this rich family that like her parents didn't really care about her. Her spoiler, her dad died, and spoiler again, her mother killed herself not too long after, so she's kind of just living on family money, living in the city, doesn't really need a real job. She works at like an art studio, just kind of like hanging out. She really doesn't care about anything, which I liked about her. She did not care about the fact that she was pretty or skinny or rich. Like, it was just like, whatever. It's just facts to her. And I know a lot of people didn't like this book because they didn't like the main character. That's what I liked about the book, is that I didn't like her. You don't have to like her. It was just kind of relating to how depressed people are kind of insufferable sometimes. And I know that. and I think it's the ugly side of it, of mental illness, is that it's not this romantic, oh, she's just sad and crying all the time. Like, no, this girl's an asshole, because she's a miserable asshole, and like that's what depression can do to you. But let's read about what I had to say when I read it. This was a very enjoyable and easy read. It was different than most of the books I've read, and I loved the dry, caustic humor, so that's what made the book more enjoyable. I was honestly surprised at some of the things that she did to accomplish sleeping all the time, and yeah, she did get to accomplish some of her goals. I'll give her that. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here. What I took away from this book is that you can start over. It's easy to be miserable, but it's really hard to be happy. So I think it's important to take time to slow down and actually work on becoming a happier, less miserable person, which, I mean, that's what I took away from it, so I think that's a good thing. Whether that's what the writer wanted, but your girl needed to hear that. I think this author really captured what depression can feel like. This constant misery and escapism and just literally hating everybody is super accurate. While I don't agree with the main character's methods of resetting herself and starting over, I could feel her exhaustion and why she just wanted to sleep for a year and how sad she was. And then when she woke up from these sleeps, I guess, the writer made you feel like her mood changed. She felt like more at peace, and I felt that. The main character does have this friend, Riva, who, she's annoying, but I feel really bad for her because the main character is so mean to her. And I really do recommend this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5, roughly 4.5. If I reread it again, we'll see. Just based on how different it was from stuff that I normally read. It wasn't like a happy-go-lucky rom-com. I still really enjoyed it, so highly recommend it. My year of rest and relaxation. I know it's a book talk favorite, but I really liked it. So this is probably going to be a longer video because I can talk and talk and talk about books. But the next one, again, book talk recommendation, but I really, really liked it. It was really cute, and it's better than the movies by Lynn Painter. This is a young adult rom-com. Loved it. It's kind of like an homage, an ode to rom-coms of the 80s to the 2000s, and a lot of those kind of references. There's some Taylor Swift references. I loved the main characters. Just overall really cute and funny and warm. So if you're looking for a simple, fun read, definitely better than the movies. Loved it. I loved Liz and Wes, their friendship, their enemies to lovers. Actually, I'd say it was enemies to friends to lovers vibes. And they had this cute banter. You could tell they really got along, and you felt their chemistry in the book. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. I should probably tell you the plot of these books. I feel like I keep skipping that part. So the main character, Liz, is a rom-com, romance-obsessed girly. She has these dreams and fantasies of having the perfect romance, and she brings that into her day-to-day life. So when a childhood friend moves back home, she decides that she is going to pursue him. She thinks he's super cute and wants to be with him. She wants to live out these rom-com fantasies. She thinks perfect, but she needs the help of her neighbor, who is her enemy, get her closer to this kid so she can fall in love with him. But then they start to have feelings for each other. There's fake dating, there's enemies to friends to lovers, childhood friends, childhood enemies, all of that mixed into this book. It's just really cute. That's all I have to say about it. It's really cute and bubblegummy and just, I don't know, rainbows and sunshines. So recommend it if you're looking for something like that. So the next book was our February book club book. I did not pick this one. So we each get to pick a different book every month, and this one was picked by one of my friends. It is The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. So this is a mystery. The main character's husband gets arrested for the murder of his mistress, and she has to decide if she wants to defend him as a lawyer or just kind of let somebody else take care of it. Which, you know, usually you're not allowed to be their lawyer because there is too much involved in that. I feel like you're too close to the case kind of vibes, but she decides to defend him, and she becomes his lawyer, and she has to prove that he is innocent or not guilty, I guess, which the whole book you're not sure, did he do it, who did it. I was on the edge of my seat for that. I was not sure who did it. I don't know, which usually I can figure that out. Overall, I was still entertained by it. However, the writing is really bad. I don't know if this is this writer's first book. I don't want to be like really mean, but I feel like the dialogue was stilted. It just did not flow naturally. Like, people don't naturally say the things that like she had them say. Their inner dialogue isn't so direct, and I feel like she was doing more of just telling us what the character is thinking rather than what the character would actually be thinking, if that makes sense. So I have a pretty good suspension of disbelief, so the plot didn't bother me, the reveal didn't bother me, because I'm like, it's a book. Of course, in real life, she wouldn't actually be the lawyer defending her husband. She wouldn't be involved in the case at all. She would be hiring somebody to do that, and she wouldn't be so close to finding out stuff from the detective. Hated Adam. He's the husband. Could not stand him. Just wanted him to go to prison. I didn't care about him. I did not see the ending coming, but it's also kind of forced. Some of it just didn't make sense. There were some plot holes and things that kind of did bother me, but I did like that the main character was kind of a bad bitch though, so I'll give her that. I think it was hard to take the book seriously just due to the dialogue and the way it was written. There was not really enough backstory on the main character's parents. I liked that the main character was smart and conniving, but at the same time, she had this very misogynistic tone to her that I did not like. Definitely not my favorite book, so I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I really wouldn't recommend it, personally, just based on how it was written. The plot sounds good, but not something I would ever read again. So that's The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. You can give it a chance, see if you like it though. That was just my personal feelings. So now we're getting into February, and I was kind of in the romance rom-com mood again. So I decided to read another book by Lynn Painter, The DoOver. This is another young adult romance book, and I really liked it a lot. I really loved this book. It was really cute and really funny. And I know I said that about Better Than the Movies, but I just love this one just as much. Everything about it was adorable. The ending was adorable. I wish I could tell you what happens, but I can't. And it was just a cute love story, and I was feeling all of my feels from it. But let me tell you the plot. So the main character is Emily, and she has the shittiest Valentine's Day of all Valentine's Days. After living through a dumpster fire of a Valentine's Day, Emily Hornsby escapes to her grandmother's house for some much-needed girl talk and companionship. There, Emily passes out on the couch, but when she wakes up, she's back home in her own bed. That's not the only shocker, though. Somehow, it's Valentine's Day. Again. And the next day, another disaster Valentine's Day. So it's Groundhog's Day meets Valentine's Day, and she keeps having these run-ins with this kid named Nick, who she doesn't know much about, but every single day is a repeat, and she's got to figure out how to stop this loop. And she gets closer to Nick, and she starts to see more about how she doesn't really like her current boyfriend. I highly recommend this. I will definitely read it again next Valentine's Day. It's got the vibes. It's got the perfect rom-com vibes. I think there was additional characters that I just didn't really care about, which was her friends. So all I cared about was Emily and Nick the whole time. I don't want to hear about anybody else. The Day of No Consequences, when you read this book, you'll get what I mean. It was so cute. I loved it. I was nearly sobbing at the end of the book. That's how adorable it was. I was feeling it. And there's a lot of Taylor Swift references, so I like that too. So Lynn Painter, once again, did great on The DoOver. Hopefully you guys have a little coffee on the side or something, because I know I'm talking a lot. So here's where I'm going to start to get a little bit out of order with this series. We read it over the course of 3 months because they were our book club books, but I'm just going to talk about them all at once. Starting with A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So I had heard about this book online at some point, and I saw it at the thrift store, and I was like, let's give it a shot. So my friends agreed, and for March we decided to read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, the first one, and I really enjoyed the mystery of this book. I did not know who the killer was or what was going on. I loved the relationship between Ravi and Pip. This is a story about the main character who decides she's going to investigate the death of 2 high school students from years prior to see who really did it. Did Sal really kill his girlfriend Andy, or were they both killed mysteriously by other people? So she decides to do a podcast and do an investigation. She meets the little brother of Sal, which is Ravi, and they decide to work together to prove that Sal is innocent. Pip gets very involved in this case, sometimes to an extreme, and it becomes a little dangerous for her. I won't tell you any spoilers of who did it and if she finds anything out. Mysteries do stress me out a lot because I'm like, what's gonna happen next? It gives me a lot of anxiety, which is why I usually read like rom-coms, because I'm like, they gonna get together, we know that. I still enjoy this book. We're gonna get more into the rest of the series because when I had finished this one, I was like, I'm not sure how this is gonna become a trilogy because kind of wrapped up the case and everything. But moving on to the second book in the series is Good Girl, Bad Blood. I thought this one was really well written, but it does suffer from the second book in the series issues where it goes in a direction that kind of feels like filler. It didn't feel like it was necessary. It's well written, will say that. I love the characters, but there is a strong lack of Pip and Ravi interactions that really make the book go down a little bit for me. There's a couple twists in this book that I didn't see coming, but also kind of didn't feel like it was necessary. I don't know. Overall, it's my least favorite of the 3. Not that there was anything bad about it. It wasn't bad. I just felt like there could have been more. If you're going to make a series of this, I feel like there should have been more to it. I still gave this one a 3.5 out of 5, as opposed to the first book I had given a 4 out of 5. So it only dropped like half a star for me, but still. Kind of like a mid-tier sequel. So now we get into the third book of the trilogy, which is As Good as Dead, which was very, very intense. I'm not sure how this is considered a young adult series at this point, but it did start off a bit slow, and I'm like, is this really a series that needed to be a series, a trilogy? Could you have just left it at 1 book? It really started to pick up towards the middle and get really interesting. Circled back to some of those themes from the second and the first book, but I also had a lot of anxiety reading this because of the situations that Pip found herself in, and it was really good. But again, these kind of books, they stress me out. There's a lot going on. I'm going to read what I wrote without giving you any spoilers, but there was definitely more Pip and Ravi together in this, which I really liked because their relationship is really cute. They have great connection to one another. But the plot was really wild to me, and I felt Pip was a little out of character, which, you know, didn't bother me, as I know a lot of people were bothered by that, by her actions. I still enjoyed the story and it kept me engaged. I do wish that she took a different path. I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I didn't like that it was Pip who was experiencing this. This could have been a great separate story for a different character, but I felt like Pip just did not make the right decisions, or else I would have given it a 5 out of 5 because it was really good. I love the whole series overall. I'd probably give all 3 together maybe a 4 out of 5. So I still recommend them, especially if you like mysteries or you need like a lighter mystery, but it starts to get more and more intense as it goes on. So this one, I guess there's probably trigger warnings and things you should look up. Same with this one. The first one's pretty straightforward. It's a past investigation. The details are there, but nothing happens, like, too bad. But this is all A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and I still recommend it. I really liked it. So, but yeah, so this was March, April, and May for my book club. So that's why I just talked about them all at the same time. And then I'm going to go back and talk about the other books that I read in between. So after I had read the first Good Girl's Guide to Murder book, I needed a little palate cleanser. Maybe what I thought was going to be more of a rom-com. It was the last Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I hadn't read, and that is Forever Interrupted. And it was actually very sad, and it didn't make me feel the romance. I just felt really sad, but I really liked it, and I will give you a synopsis real quick. So Elsie Porter, she's a 20-something who jumps into this marriage really quickly. She falls in love. They get married after maybe a couple months of knowing each other. Within months, they elope. He did not tell his mother or his family about it, so nobody really knows about Elsie. Tragically, this is on the back, so this isn't a spoiler, okay? Tragically, Ben dies by getting hit by a car while he's riding his bike, and she has to learn to move on without him. She meets his mother that she never knew and never knew she existed, and there's a lot of trauma and grief that they're both dealing with, and they have to learn to deal with it together. And I love the connection that they eventually make, and unfortunately it's made through really bad circumstances. I think that the author tackled grief really well. So a friend was reading this at the same time as me, and I kept texting her. I'm like, their relationship is moving really fast. Like, damn, like, slow down, girl. Y'all getting married after a few months of knowing each other. That was funny to me. It was just, we were both like, girl, y'all moving really fast here. But I guess he was the love of her life, so if you feel that way about somebody, you move really fast. I think what I'm going to take away from this book is that grief is really, really hard, but you need somebody to lean on sometimes, and you can keep going and you can move on and live a happy life, but it's hard. I did rate this higher than the other Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I had read earlier in the year. This was the last TJR book that I hadn't read of hers. So now I have a full ranking, actually, which I will read to you. I will tell you what my ranking is, and I want to know how you guys feel. Starting with the last book, my least favorite was After I Do. I'd already mentioned that. After that, Maybe in Another Life. I read that last year. Forever Interrupted, which is what I was just talking about. Malibu Rising. I read that last year. One True Loves. Loved that book. Read that last year. 3, Carrie Soto is Back. That book just came out last September. Loved it. Number 2 is 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Talked about it. I've raved about it before. And then my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book is Daisy Jones and the Six. Not surprising. It's got all the vibes that I like, and I just like how it's written. It's very different. So that's how I feel about her books, but let's move on to the next book that I read in 2023. So because the last 2 books had been either a mystery that gave me stress or a very sad romance book, I decided I wanted something that was a freaking rom-com that was gonna end on a happy note. And that was another Lynn Painter book, was The Love Wager. So this was a more mature book. This one just came out in March. And what's funny is I did not realize this was kind of a spin-off to Mr. Wrong Number, which I hadn't read. So I found that out after I finished this one. This was a really cute and funny book. It's a little more mature because it's meant for adults, but I don't know if I liked the character relationships as much as I do in her young adult books. It did feel a little rushed at times, and it was an easy read, so I still enjoyed it. I think Jack and Hallie had great chemistry. I liked that they became friends first. So this book is about Hallie. She's kind of a hot mess right now. She's trying to figure her life out a little bit, and she meets Jack, and they both decide that they need to find their new person, and they both get on dating apps, and they kind of just help each other out on their dates, give them advice, and then, you know, eventually they fall in love, whatever. I do like Lynn Painter's young adult books better than her adult books. I don't think I'm the only person that feels that way, because although I liked Hallie and Jack, she felt a little bit too, I'm not like other girls at times, which is really annoying to me. Like, I get it, you're cool and you're not like other girls. You're not a girly girl. You'd rather play football and drink whiskey with the boys. Like, bleh. And also, I hate that every rom-com book mentions that this guy, he's 100 feet tall. You know, he's so tall. He's like taller than the Empire State Building, and I'm so dainty and small and cute and teeny tiny. Yeah, I just get so irritated. Like, as a small, short person, I still can't stand that. Like, oh my god, he's like 8 feet tall and I'm so tiny in comparison. Shut the fuck up. Some of their banter felt a little forced, and their backstories were not as detailed or like well fleshed out. Hallie has this lack of relationship with her family, yet she's expected to be in her sister's wedding, which she doesn't mention much about. She mentions that she has a sister and like nothing else is talked about, versus she meets like Jack's family and Jack's sister, so it doesn't make sense to me. But I did love the Pride and Prejudice and the New Girl references in this book, so I still recommend it because I like the author a lot. It's just not as much my favorite as the other 2 Lynn Painter books that I've read. So this one is very different than what I normally read, but I decided to read this book because I love the video game so much, and that is Final Fantasy VII Traces of Two Pasts. books. This is about Tifa and Aerith from the games, and it follows their backstory and kind of brings us to where Remake is at the time in that story. So I'll be really quick with this one because I do feel like it's a very niche book. If you like Final Fantasy VII, or if you like any of the Final Fantasy games and you want to get into Final Fantasy VII, I think it's a really great lead up to the game. This just tells us about Tifa's backstory, where she comes from, how she ended up in Midgar. Same with Aerith, but they're two separate sections of the book. I liked the book and I really enjoyed learning about the characters. I would have liked them to have more interactions with the rest of their party. So they're telling their stories to respective members of their group of people. And Cloud, the main character from like Final Fantasy VII and Remake, barely speaks in the book, and it's like you'd think Tifa would be talking to him more because they're childhood friends, and I don't know. Her part was much more interesting than Aerith's. I felt like they could have fleshed hers out a little bit more. I wouldn't have minded if the book was longer. I wanted to know more about these characters because I like them from the game. I wanted more. Just give me more. But overall, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Could have been longer and more detailed, honestly. But if you like the game, it's really interesting to me. So this next book was a thrift store find. I had heard very little about it, but I was intrigued by the cover. So unfortunately, I do judge a book by its cover. And it's called These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This book is kind of a spin on Romeo and Juliet and the tragic love story, feuding families. If you've been alive for any period of time, then you've heard of Romeo and Juliet. So it's a spin on Romeo and Juliet, but it's set in 1920s Shanghai, China. It's about a blood feud between two gangs. You've got the Scarlets and you've got the White Flowers, which, you know, Juliet is a Scarlet and Roma is a White Flower. Not sure why they changed it to just where he's Roma and she's still Juliet. I don't know. But it gets more into a fantasy style book where there's a monster roaming around, killing off gang members, and they have to work together. And I think this book was beautifully written. The details, every scene was painted perfectly. Like you could visualize it just reading it. She was very detailed about her descriptions. I do think at times it got a little bit boring, but that's because it's very long. It is 450 pages, which it took me like 2 weeks to get through it because it just felt long and drawn out, where I think there could have been some cutting down in there. But I really liked the characters, especially the main two characters, Juliet and Roma. I loved the twist on Juliet becoming more of a bad bitch, I guess I'd say. I think this could lead to me reading more fantasy books in the future because I did enjoy it and I liked the world building. There's also a sequel to this book, so I'm gonna check it out at some point. But I do recommend it if you like fantasies, if you like twists on Shakespearean plays. But yeah, be prepared for it to be a little bit longer. But I guess most fantasy books are like that because they spend so much time building the scenery as opposed to just working on the dialogue and the plot parts. But interesting plot. Just wish it could have sped up a little bit more. Like, get to the point. So this book is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. It's supposed to be young adult, which, I mean, there's not that much spice or anything. But there is some, you know, death and stuff. So I was really looking for a palate cleanser because that book was very long, very detailed. I wanted something that I could just shut my brain off and just enjoy the ride. And that book is a BookTok favorite lately, and it is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. So for what it is, I really liked it for the most part. I think the two main characters had a good relationship. I liked Anastasia's relationship with her friends and Nate's friends. He's the other main character. I liked the plot being about ice skating and hockey, and they're in college. I really liked that they were older and not high schoolers because I feel like for the spice that's in this book, it'd be very inappropriate if they were like teenagers. They're both like 21, 22, so it's more appropriate. I do think that it dragged out at certain points and was a little repetitious. Get to the point, chop some of this stuff out. Like, there were scenes that could have been cut. Keeps the plot flowing naturally and doesn't repeat itself too much. I think that Anastasia and Nate had very healthy communication, and that is not something that's shown in a lot of rom-coms. Anastasia is a big advocate for therapy, especially with the stress she's under, which I think for younger audiences reading this, obviously they're going in for the spice, but they're getting a little bit of like, hey, mental health is good to take care of. Go to therapy. She goes to therapy. Talk things out. Work on your communication skills and your relationships. That was kind of refreshing to me. I really appreciated that. Random side bits to all of the sex scenes in this book. I did not like the epilogue though. That's what really shot this down in my stars, because I don't want to spoil anything, but it made no sense. This is not what this book was about. This is not what her dream is about. I hate that trope. I guess for if you've read it, I'll do a spoiler alert. Spoiler. Stassi getting pregnant after going to the Olympics. Why? Why is she pregnant? She just said in the book that she wanted to adopt. Why are you getting her pregnant at like 23 years old when she's still an Olympic athlete? Like, stupid. I hated it. That was the epilogue. Hated that part. Spent too much time on scenes that didn't matter instead of the actual plot of Anastasia and Nate working together to help her skate for nationals. But overall, I gave it a 3 stars, 3 out of 5. Good palate cleanser, good easy read. If you need some spice, definitely a lot of spicy scenes. Just a little bit too long for me. Not that I'm stupid and I can't read long books, but just the plot needed to speed up a little bit. It was a little slow. We got one more book for you that I've read so far this year, and it is the other Lynn Painter book. The last book that I read so far this year is Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter, because I read The Love Wager. I got to know where it kind of started, and it's interesting to see Jack as just the brother and the side character when I know it in the opposite way. This one is pretty forgettable in all of her books. It's another adult rom-com. I did not fall in love with the characters like I did in Better Than the Movies and The DoOver. Olivia and Colin did not really do much for me as a couple. I wasn't obsessed with them or their will they won't they kind of stuff. Not every rom-com is for everybody, so this was definitely my least favorite of her books. It made it difficult for me to like them as a couple and want to root for them because they did not communicate very well. The story felt really dragged out and repetitious. Like, how many times are you gonna have Olivia get mad at Colin for something that either didn't happen or is a misunderstanding? And eventually I just did not care if they got together or not, and the ending felt rushed, and I don't know, spoiler alert, why they ended up together, because she was mad at him for like 2 months and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'm leaving. So now she's in love with him again. It did not make any sense to me. She jumps to these conclusions about him that come out of nowhere. And I hate that he says to her that he has no idea how he could love somebody like her because she's as messy as she is. And I'm like, and you want me to root for them? Like, they don't like each other. They're unlikable. There were some cute moments and some tension that I liked, but like, they're not a good couple. Not at all. So I only gave this book a 3 out of 5 compared to her other books. I think that she is a great writer, but this was not her strongest book because it relied too heavily on these characters that were just not likable to me. And again, there can be unlikable people, but don't expect me to root for them. Mr. Wrong Number, my least favorite of Lynn Painter's books. I still recommend it as a lover of her writing and her books, but these characters just, if you compare the 2 adult books of hers that I read with the young adult, in this video alone you can tell how I feel stronger for the young adult books than her adult books. So my camera battery's dying because I've been talking for so long. So we're gonna have to wrap this up really quickly. Thanks for listening to me talk about books for a very long period of time. It was really fun to talk about these books that I really liked, or even if I didn't like it. It's one of those topics that I could talk all day about. So hopefully this gave you some ideas for your summer reading, or just if you want to get into reading. I am not the knower, seer of all. I can't tell you if you're gonna like a book or not, but this is just based on my taste, okay? So don't be mad at me if I didn't like your book that you liked, okay? It happens. Let me know if you read any of these books, what you think. If you have any recommendations for me, I love to hear about it. Drop a comment, drop some likes. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me a lot and it keeps my channel going. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.